Thank you. And we have with us tonight, presenting to the community, a workshop on financial aid, the Director of Financial Aid at Skidmore College, Beth Post. She will be presenting to you great information. And if you have questions regarding any of the material this evening, there is a chat feature on WebEx that can be used to post your questions. Just please remember you have to put the question out to all attendees as an option so that we can read that for you, and we will address those questions at the end. Thank you for joining us tonight, Beth. I'll let you take it away.
Sure, thanks. My pleasure. Let's see if I can get my screen share to work here. Start the presentation. We're all happy, we were saying before this started, not to have gotten in our cars and traveled in this freezing cold weather. So that's a bonus to doing some more virtual events than we would otherwise have to do. So I'm happy to talk with you tonight. I try to pack a lot into this half an hour. So I want to get going and make sure I have a little bit of time at the end for some questions. So I start with, what is financial aid? The financial aid administrators think about financial aid as being able to be put into one of these three buckets. There's gift aid, which are grants and scholarships. It's the best kind of financial aid to receive. It's money that's not having to be repaid. It's money that's given to the student who's enrolled at college or higher education institution. Sorry, my phone is ringing. And it's really, as I said, the best kind to receive. It's often the kind of financial aid that, or it's often the financial aid that people think of when they talk about financial aid. When they say general, oh, I'm interested in financial aid, they're thinking grants and scholarships. But there are two other kinds of financial aid that are available to students. There's loan aid and work aid. Loan aid are, as you would guess, student and parent loans that are available to students who are attending college. If we're talking about a student loan, the only reason the government lends money to students who are 17 or 18 years old, who might have no credit or bad credit, is because they're attending college. That's the only reason the government is going to take that risk and let a student borrow money. Because it's tied to them being enrolled in college, it's a part of financial aid, and that's why it's considered financial aid, even though the student has to repay those funds over time with interest. There are two main types of student loans, the subsidized student loan and the unsubsidized federal student loan. Subsidized means that the interest on that loan is being paid by the government while the student is enrolled in college. So no interest is accruing on those kinds of student loans if the student qualifies. In addition to the subsidized loan, there's an unsubsidized student loan. Unsubsidized, as you might guess now, means that the interest is accruing on that type of student loan while the student's enrolled in college. But in neither case does any payment have to be made while the student's enrolled at least half time. They can defer paying on that and not begin repaying until they drop to less than half time or they graduate. In addition to those two student loans, there's also a federal parent loan where parents can borrow and help finance their son or daughter's education at college. Again, on that loan, the interest is accruing and the payments on those loans also may be deferred or postponed while the student's enrolled at least half time for up to 4 years. Those are the main types of student loans from the federal government. There are private lenders that lend money to families to help them finance educational expenses, like banks and other educational lenders. Those are private loans, so those terms can vary. And New York State has a great resource that you can look up some information, sort of a clearinghouse for all that, where they've compiled all that information together in one site. And that's located at Higher Education Services Corporation. So that's HESC. There's a link later on that I'll share with you, but it's a governmental agency. So those are the loans, and then there's work aid. You might be familiar with the term work study. That means that that's a part-time job, partially funded by the federal government for students who demonstrate need. It's a part-time job on campus. It's usually between 7 and 10 hours a week. The student earns a little bit of pocket money. They keep that money, use it toward expenses, personal expenses or supplies or books that they have that semester, or they can save those funds and use it toward upcoming semester expenses. So really just think of that as a part-time job that is part of the financial aid award, because the government helps the colleges with funding that payment for students who demonstrate financial need. And I'll get into that a bit more in a moment, as soon as I figure out how to advance my slide. Let's see. Okay, it worked that time. So in order to get access to those funds that I was describing, you need to fill out at least one financial aid application. A common and one financial aid application that all colleges would require if you want to be considered for financial aid is the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And there'll be workshops in the fall. Certainly, Saratoga High has been great about providing different speakers and help with families, for families who need to complete this application and really drill down on getting that done. But for now, to give you an idea, it's a free application. It doesn't cost anything to submit this form. You provide a lot of information on this application, information such as demographic information, like the student's social security number, name, date of birth, address, etc. Income information, parent income information, student income information, and asset information. So parent and student cash savings checking, if you have other investments or real estate. All of that is provided on that FAFSA, and then you list the colleges on there that the student intends to apply to for admission. And each college that's listed on the FAFSA receives your information and processes it. And if you're admitted at the college, they let you know how much you qualify for in federal, state, and institutional funds. In addition to this FAFSA, there's a second financial aid application called the CSS Profile. It's administered by the College Board, and only certain colleges require that in addition to the FAFSA. Usually colleges that are more selective and are private colleges. Public colleges really don't require this, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a moment as well. You want to pay attention to deadlines. You want to make sure that you complete these applications or application by the earliest of all the college deadlines that the student's applying to for admission. October 1st is sort of the date that you should have in mind. These forms become available around October 1st for each year annually. So some colleges, you have different deadlines from different colleges. So at Skidmore, for example, our deadline's January 15th. Another college may have a December 30th deadline. Another college might have a March 1st deadline. So you want to take a look at the college's deadline and make sure you get the form or forms in before the earliest of all those colleges. So the FAFSA, as I said, collects that demographic and other financial information about the student and family. The first step in completing the FAFSA is to create an FSA user ID and password. And you'll use those for a couple of things. For one, you'll need it to sign into and then sign the FAFSA and certify that you're completing that information and that it's accurate and true. And also later on, once the student's been awarded funds, including student loans, they'll have to do some other online interaction with the federal government to get access to those loans, and they'll need the student will need their user ID and password again in the future. The student and one parent needs to, in the case of a dependent student, needs to have their own FSA ID and password, because their parent is also signing on the FAFSA that their information is true and accurate. And so you file that each year. So in October, in advance of the following September academic year, and generally in the fall, the college will tell you their requirements once the student's enrolled somewhere, but you're going to reapply each year, and each year is going to ask you similar but slightly different information. So for this upcoming fall, it would be based on the parent and student's 2019 income, for example. For the fall of 2022, it'll be asking about the 2020 parental student income. So that's why you need to reapply each year, because your situation may change. This is what it looks like, a screenshot of the page. Make sure you're at the right place. So you want to be at fafsa.ed.gov, and this presentation will be posted as well. So if you can't quite see some of the URLs that you come across or need to take notes, you'll be able to do that. So the first step is to do the user ID and password, and then you would click Start Here, new to the FAFSA process, to complete the application. Once you've completed it and submitted it, you can go back in. Let's say you realize you've made an error. You can go back in. You can see that red arrow says correct information. So you log back into correct information. Or let's say that the student lists 2 colleges on there. And then after you've submitted the FAFSA, they decide they want to apply to a 3rd college for admission. You log back in and add another college there. So you can always do that. You don't have to panic if you've completed it, submitted it, and now you need to add more colleges. Some common errors that I think is really helpful for you all to be aware of. At Skidmore right now, we're in the middle of reviewing many applications for prospective students and applicants. And we're seeing these, I see these every year. I've been doing financial aid now for over 30 years, and there hasn't been a year where I haven't had many of these to look at. So if you can avoid these, that would be great. When you complete the FAFSA, it's often the parent of a dependent student that's completing the FAFSA for the student. You want to remember the FAFSA is the student application on which parental information is provided. So every place it says you or your, it's asking about the student. So when it says what's your name, what's your date of birth, what's your marital status, it's asking for the student. Otherwise, it would say, what's the parental or parent's marital status, social security number, name, etc. It's really easy. I know we're helping our kids and we're doing 10 million other things and we're trying to get this financial aid application done. Just keep that in mind and try not to make that mistake. Reporting your retirement funds under investments. So let's say you have a 401k plan or an IRA and it's got some funds in there. When the FAFSA says parents, what are your investments? They're not talking about anything that you have in a qualified retirement plan. So be sure to exclude that on the FAFSA. If you have a 529 plan, that's a college savings plan, that should always be reported in the parent's name as an investment. So let's say you have 2 children and you have 2 529 plans, one for them each. They're both reported in the parent's name under investments on the FAFSA. If you accidentally put it in the student's name, what's going to happen is you're going to be sort of assessed at a higher rate. So it's more beneficial to you in the calculation to determine eligibility to make sure you do this right and report it in the parent's name, because the parental assets are assessed less heavily than if the student had $10,000 in a 529 plan in their own name. So it's more accurate and correct and better for you if you get that one right. Reporting home equity as investment or real estate equity. So the FAFSA is not asking anything about the value of your home or any equity you have in your home, nor does it ask anything about your monthly payment or taxes or anything like that. But it does ask about your real estate equity, but it's referring to your non-primary residence real estate equity. So you would always exclude your primary residence, your home, as an asset on the FAFSA. On the profile, you will be reporting some of these things, but on the FAFSA, you will not. And don't forget that if you contribute toward your retirement plan, whatever you contribute that's pre-tax, so it's not taxable, so you make a tax-deferred pension contribution, the amount you contribute in that particular year is counted as untaxed income on the FAFSA. So if you contribute $100 a month, let's say, from your paycheck to your retirement plan, and those funds aren't taxed, That's counted as untaxed income on the FAFSA. It's not taxable, you haven't paid tax on it, but it is money that you had access to. So you have to report that for financial aid purposes. This is the screenshot of the CSS Profile login page. And so that's what it looks like. That's how you will know you're at the right spot. What I've circled there is where you can look to see if the colleges to which your son or daughter is applying requires this form, the CSS Profile, in addition to the FAFSA. So you would click on that. It shows you a list of all the colleges, whether they just require the profile for first year students or for first year and current students, etc. So you won't have to guess, and you won't have to look at the different colleges' websites. You can go to this one spot to see if you get the joy of doing the FAFSA and the profile, or whether you just need to do the FAFSA for your student. In addition to completing the financial aid application, the FAFSA, and perhaps the profile, you also want to take a look at some scholarship application websites. I've listed here fastweb.com. It's a big scholarship search engine. It's a national database for these scholarships. And so there are many, many, many scholarships listed here. And it's safe, and your son or daughter can log on, put in some information about themselves, and see if they may have any matches with scholarships. So that's a great job for them and opportunity. However, it's a national scholarship database, so it also means it's very competitive. So you've got students from all over the country applying for these same scholarships, and it's possible. We get about, at Skidmore, we have about 2,500 students, and we get about 400 students every year who come to Skidmore having one, not necessarily from this place, but having won an outside scholarship. So it's not like it doesn't happen. It just may, want to have realistic expectations. Maybe a few $100s instead of a few $1,000s is what you might be looking at there. In addition to that National Scholarship Database, and I just want to check ahead here, there are local scholarships. So local scholarships, there are fewer of them, but the chances of the student actually receiving and winning one are much higher. So hopefully the Brandy may correct me if I'm wrong about this, but last I knew it was on the Naviance account under scholarships, and the Saratoga High's website there will be also a source for you to find some local scholarships a student can apply for. In addition, I'm on the, happen to be on the Rotary Education Foundation board, and we give away between $60,000 and $70,000 each year. And our only population is Saratoga School District. So seniors from Saratoga School District are the only ones who are eligible to apply for these scholarships. So I really strongly encourage, we only get, 40 to 50 applicants every year, and we give away, some significant funds. So when the time's right, when the student's a senior, and the application timeline is always the same, between February 1st and April 1st, go to the either the Saratoga Springs Rotary Club or Foundation websites, and you'll be able to find the application there. So there's national databases, local databases, as well as the FAFSA and Profile as ways for you to apply for the best kind of financial aid, gift aid, but also loans and student employment. In addition, New York State has some significant resources to help everyone. So New York State has the Excelsior Scholarship. That's the scholarship for families who are New York State residents, New York State high school graduates, attending New York State colleges only. So if the student goes out of state to college, then this scholarship wouldn't apply. So it's for SUNYs and CUNYs. The family has to have $125,000 income or less. There's a URL, very long URL at the top, or you can go to hesc.ny.gov and search for Excelsior Scholarship, and then you'll be able to find out more information. But this is a separate application, I should say. So you have to do the FAFSA, and then at the right time of year, you also need to do this New York State Excelsior Scholarship in order for the student to be considered. In addition to that Excelsior Scholarship, there's also the main New York State grant is called TAP, Tuition Assistance Program. It's a grant from New York State. It's based on the student and parent New York State taxable income, which is basically your federal adjusted gross income, less exemptions and deductions. So that has to be $80,000 or less for the student to qualify for funds. They also have to be New York State resident, New York State high school graduate attending a New York State college. The student has to be enrolled full-time, so that's 12 credits or more per semester in order to qualify for TAP as well. So once you file the FAFSA, if you've listed any New York State colleges on that FAFSA, you'll be prompted upon completion and submission of the FAFSA to continue on and complete the New York State TAP application, which is yet another application. So you'd want to go ahead and do that. If for some reason that link doesn't show up or you add a New York State college after your initial submission of the FAFSA, you can go right to that hesc.ny.gov website and complete the TAP application separately. But if you're in the sort of zone of completing the financial aid applications, you might as well get it done all at once if possible. And I'm going to go really quickly through these. So once you've submitted your financial aid applications, they arrive at the college, and the financial aid administrator at the college is looking at determining your financial need. And we do this using this very simple formula. We take our cost of attendance, we subtract your family contribution, and the difference is the demonstrated financial need of the student at our college. A little bit more about that middle number, the family contribution, is based on those factors that I mentioned and are collected on the FAFSA and on the CSS profile. Most importantly, household size, number of dependents enrolled in college, the parental income, student income, and both assets. All of that is put through a formula, an actual formula, to determine a parent contribution and a student contribution. That parent contribution and the student contribution are added together and they're combined to create that family contribution, or theoretically what a family may be able to contribute toward their son or daughter's education in 1 year. And that is what I'm calling here is your family contribution. And again, the difference between the college's cost and what you can contribute based on this formula is the student's demonstrated need at that college. Here's some examples. Let's say we have a family size of 4, only one in the family enrolled in college, and a family income of around $75,000, and the student has applied to 3 different kinds of colleges. One is a 4-year public, a 4-year private, and then a community college. Let's say the 4-year public is just under $20,000 a year for the student to be enrolled full-time and live on campus. Let's say there's a 4-year private with a $60,000 price tag, tuition fees, room and board. And then the student also decides to apply to a community college where full-time tuition only is about $3,500. So if we have the family with the circumstances mentioned in orange above, their family contribution would be calculated to be around $9,000. That's even a little bit on the high side. So thinking back to that simple formula, we take the price, $19,500, subtract the family contribution, and we get the differing financial needs at the bottom. So at the 4-year public, the student need is $10,500, 4-year private, $51,000. So you have a much greater need because the price of attendance, cost of attendance is much higher. The student has no need at the community college, but they could still borrow that federal unsubsidized student loan and finance their community college education entirely on their own. For the other two, I'll continue on here. We have computer systems that are colleges that are receiving the data from the FAFSA, putting it through calculations and determining eligibility based on the criteria we provide to it. So in the example of the $10,500 public school, the student will qualify for the subsidized student loan. It's a need-based loan and there's plenty of need. And so the maximum first year award is $3,500, and that's what the student would qualify for. And the public school would put that on a financial aid award letter once the student's been admitted and assuming they have the FAFSA. In addition, the student would qualify for that work study, student employment opportunity. Usually it's around a $2,000 award. The student would qualify for $500 in TAP, because their income is below that threshold of $80,000, but it's not low enough to make that award any higher than $500,000. And so the total financial aid would be $6,000. The net price to the family is $19,000. Net price is defined as the top line price of $19,500 minus grant assistance, grants and scholarships only. So the only grant in this award is the $500 TAP. So net price is $19,000. On the private side, $51,000 is the demonstrated need because the cost is so high. Similar to the public, $3,500 loan would be awarded, $2,000 in work study the student would qualify for. Let's say it's a New York State college, they still get their $500 in TAP. Now, what's in the next yellow box really depends and varies from college to college, depending upon their resources and policies. At Skidmore, we have a policy that says we promise to meet the demonstrated need, in this case, 51,000 of all our admitted students, as long as you apply for financial aid on time. So at Skidmore, we would award 45,000. At another school, they may not be able to do that. And so the award might show 40,000 or 35, or it could even be higher. It could be 50. So they vary depending upon the college's resources and policies. Just one more thing here. So in this example, the net price to the family, what they would be paying out of pocket or through loans is less in a private than at the public. So this can happen at Skidmore. Our average grant is above $40,000. So it's not a real unusual, rare example. This is not to say that it always costs less to send your son or daughter to an expensive private. If your family contribution is $75,000, which means maybe your income is closer to $300,000, at Skidmore, you'd get no grant. And if you chose to send your son or daughter to Skidmore and you had those resources, you'd fully pay the $60,000 or $70,000 that it costs. And you would only pay $19,500 to send your son or daughter to a SUNY. So some big picture things for you all to think about there. Net price calculators, you can read this at your leisure. I do want to have a minute or two for questions, but basically these are calculators of grant that the federal government requires every college to have on their website somewhere. They can give you estimates of need-based grants at colleges who offer need-based grants, which is almost all of us, and merit-based grants as well, or merit-based scholarships from colleges that offer those. This is a sort of a great web page to go to so that you don't have to try and search out those net price calculators on different college websites. Colleges are supposed to report our URLs for our net price calculators to the federal government so that if a student or parent went here, and I've got Siena College listed there, but you can type in any college and you hit enter and you should be able to go right to that college's net price calculator to put in some information ahead of time and get a sense of affordability. Once the colleges have your financial aid application material, we review it. We may reach out if we have any questions about it. We put together your eligibility, and then we notify you after you're admitted to the college. You want to make sure that you receive that, you understand it, and let's say you get a financial aid decision and it's not enough to make it an affordable option for you or your family. You can always appeal, which just means you're going to ask for additional consideration, ask for more help. You'll just get on the phone or email the financial aid office. It's just people like me on the other end of the phone trying to help people like you. And you let us know, is there a job loss, some change, or even if not, if it's just not affordable based on what we've put together, then we'll give you some options, maybe for financing, and maybe also we can help with some additional grant. Doesn't hurt to ask. The worst that can happen is the financial aid administrator says, I'm sorry, we are unable to assist you further. So if I don't get to many questions, I'm sorry about that. You may feel free to contact me. You can call the financial aid office. We're working remotely now, but we are returning phone calls, or you can email me. It doesn't matter if your son or daughter is applying to Skidmore or not. I would be happy to help you through this process. Now I have to see about unsharing this. Stop sharing. Got it. Okay. I don't see any questions. I don't know if anybody else does.
No, I don't. Questions are open, folks. We have a few minutes to answer some.
For a few seconds, sorry.
That's fine.
Rushed through that, but there's a lot packed in there for a half an hour. Oh, okay. So here's a question. So the question is about what about when parents are divorced? Great question. So if parents are divorced or separated, then currently the rule is the parent with whom the student lived with most in the prior 12 months to completing the form is the parent whose data has to go on both the FAFSA and the profile. If that parent is remarried, then that parent's current spouse's information also must be provided on the FAFSA and the profile. The other parent, whom I'll informally refer to as the non-custodial parent, that non-custodial parent's information does not belong anywhere on the FAFSA. Not the social security number, not the income, no assets, not the name, nothing. That person does not provide their information on the FAFSA. If you have to complete the profile, many colleges will request or require that non-custodial parent to also complete a separate profile and provide that information to the college as well. So let's say that someone who is not filing the FAFSA has a 529 plan, whether it's a grandparent or the non-custodial parent. The only 529 plan savings that need to be listed on the FAFSA are the ones that the parent on the FAFSA controls or is in the student's name themselves. It gets a little complicated. So once the student receives funds, however, from those 529 plans in the future, they have to report that as income in their name on the FAFSA, not on a tax return, but on the FAFSA. That then is in the future counted as income. Is it best to complete the FAFSA regardless if you think you'll qualify for aid? I would say it is, because at least you'll qualify for the federal unsubsidized student loan, which is a non-need-based student loan. So regardless of your financial circumstances, if the student is a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, enrolled at least half-time, working toward a degree and files a FAFSA, they can borrow $5,500 as a first-year student, $6,500 as a sophomore, $7,500 as a junior or senior. So for that reason alone, the interest rates are also very low on these student loans right now. They're 2.75%. So I would recommend you filing a FAFSA. And what if the parents are 50-50? Okay, so what if, as I said, it's whomever the student lived with most in the prior 12 months to completing the form. It's probably not exactly 50-50 because there are 365 days in a year. But I realize there are 24 hours in a day, so you could try to get that narrow. The next criteria, if the parents say it's exactly 50-50, the next regulated criteria is whichever parent provided more financial support is the parent whose data must be provided on the FAFSA. And then that's how you would decide, if you can't decide based on how frequently or how often the student lives with one parent or the other. So it's 6:34. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry that I'm a little over, but I'm glad we don't have a ton of questions I didn't get to. And please do feel free to email me directly if you'd like. I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Beth.
Thank you very
You're
much,
welcome.
Beth. Our next presenter will be on with us shortly. He will be joining us from RPI and addressing additional documents that matter in an application beyond the transcript. Hi, Ulysses.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. We have a lot of attendees eager to hear what you have to say for us tonight.
As usual, I'll say.
Yeah. We are glad to have you back. We'll let you take it away.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ulysses de Armas, and I am Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at what I like to refer to as the Nerdy Tech School in Troy, New York, otherwise or better known as Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. This is always one of my favorite activities to be a part of. I'm just sorry that we can't get together and do this in person. But I do have a lot of information for you in a short amount of time, so I'm going to get right into it. I've been asked to talk about three topics dealing beyond the transcript. We all know that the transcript is a very important piece of the application process, but tonight I'm going to be talking about the college interview, the resume, and also the essay. I'm going to start with the interview. Uh, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so I don't know of any institutions that are offering, one-on-one personal on-campus interviews at this moment in time. In terms, or perhaps there are, colleges that aren't even doing virtual interviews either. If they are, and if you are the type of student who is rather outgoing and likes to talk about themselves and is able to carry on a conversation with an admissions counselor or another adult, then perhaps an opportunity to meet with somebody from the admissions staff virtually might be a good activity for you to get involved in. I always tell all families that interviews need to be student driven and not parent driven. It is a disaster. I've seen it before when parents are forcing students to have to do an interview at a particular school when it's clear that a student is not ready or doesn't have really the personality to be able to handle that type of a situation. So that, as I mentioned, interviews are for students who have strong personalities, can talk about themselves with another adult. Interviews are really just one-on-one conversations with somebody from the admissions staff. So that if you're going to sign up for some type of a virtual or in-person interview, really, it's very simple. You need to be able to talk about two things. There are two areas that you need to be able to discuss. Number one, your academics. What courses have you taken? What courses are you going to take as a senior or perhaps as a junior, depending upon when you're doing the interview. And during that discussion of academics, that is also a good opportunity for you to talk about perhaps any struggles that you may have had academically. Perhaps as a freshman, you had a rough transition going into high school. The interview would be a good place for you to talk about those particular struggles, and that it took you a while to kind of get going. So you definitely want to talk about your academics. And then number two, you want to talk about your extracurricular activities. What are the things that you are involved in, outside of the classroom? And I'm going to talk about that more specifically in a minute. And then the final thing is be prepared to ask questions of whoever it is that is doing the interview. Okay, you want to show some demonstrated interest. You want to show that particular admissions counselor that you are actually interested in their school. So if you can ask a couple of questions, it shows that you've done some research or that you are interested in that particular college. There's no reason to really be nervous. Dress comfortably, even if it is a virtual interview. You don't have to dress up as though you're going to the prom, but you shouldn't look like you're going to the beach on a summer's day either. So there should be a really happy medium in there in terms of how to dress. And really have fun with it. Remember, this is probably the person who will be reading your application if you decide to apply to that particular institution. So it's somebody that you want to get to know. It's somebody that you want to develop a relationship with. So it should be a very casual situation. Okay. So academics, extracurriculars, and then make sure that you ask a question. The second thing that I want to talk about is your activities resume, especially now with COVID happening. I know that a lot of you have had issues in terms of activities because you're not on your campuses, or you're only on campus, maybe once or twice a week. As admissions counselors, we know that information, so that even though we want to know what it is, all of the different things that you've been involved in, we're very well aware that that may be very limited information, and we're certainly not going to hold that against you due to all of the COVID restrictions that are going on. With that said, in terms of your activities resume, the nature of the different activities that you've been involved in is really not what we're interested in. Colleges really want to see two things when it comes to your activities resume. Number one, what were you passionate about in terms of your activities? So it really doesn't matter what it is that you did. If you were passionate about being in robotics, or being in the band, or playing chess, or you were an athlete and you played a couple of sports, or even if it was just one sport, that's fine, but concentrate on the activities that you were passionate about, that you got excited for when it was time to go to a practice, or go to a meeting, or to go to a specific event that you helped set up. Those are the types of activities that we want to know. And then the second thing is, what were your leadership roles within those particular clubs and activities? Okay. Were you a captain? Were you an officer? Did you help start a club at your school? Those are all things that are important pieces of information that as a college or university, we are really interested in knowing about you. So we want to know about things that you did inside of school, but also we want to know about things that you did outside of school. Are you an Eagle Scout? Did you do community service? Did you have a part-time job? Were you involved in religious activities at your church or your synagogue or temple? Those are all things that we want to know. And then the last thing, because of COVID, I know that there may be some of you out there that perhaps you've started something new. Maybe you learned, you learned how to play the guitar or the piano, or, there was something that you used to do before that because of COVID and the restrictions, you've started doing that again. That is certainly something that you should mention as part of your activities resume. So even though you may be limited in terms of the different activities that you're involved in, feel free to let us know of different things that you've been involved in, especially any new things that you have been able to start due to the COVID restrictions. I always like to spend the bulk of my time talking about the essay, because I know that for many students, the essay is the one piece of the process that really strikes a dread and terror for a lot of students. And there really is no reason for you to feel that way. The essay is really the only piece of the process that you will be able to control by the time you apply to schools, so that by the time next fall comes around, and it's October or November, and you decide to apply, everything else is going to be done. If you depending upon whether a school is test optional, all of those tests will need to be done before you apply. Your transcript, there's nothing that you're going to be able to do about the first 3 years, 3.5 years of high school. All of that's going to be done. Your letter or letters of recommendation, once you've asked your teachers for a letter of recommendation, that's really out of your hands. There's nothing really that you're going to be able to do there to control that. And then your activities resume will be your activities resume. What are the things that you've been involved in up to that point? Those are the things that we're going to want to know about. So that the essay is really the only piece of the process that you're going to be able to control. So what I want to do is just kind of give you some tips about the essay. There's no need for you to buy a book to tell you how to write an essay. You're all juniors going to be seniors in high school. You should know by now how to write an essay. We're not looking for a specific thing. We want to see your creativity. We want to hear your voice. We don't need you to, this is not a perfect science. So we are not expecting perfection when it comes to the essay. There is no specific formula on how to write this particular college essay. The purpose of the essay is for you to tell us something about who you are that we're not going to find out by reading the other pieces of your application. So there's a lot of freedom there in terms of things that you can write about. If there's something academic that you want to write about, maybe there's something, that you're really passionate about that you want to give us more information about in terms of within your essay, that's a great place to kind of write about that. Perhaps there's an extracurricular activity that's listed in your resume, but that is really going to give us some more information about who you are. The essay is the perfect place for you to kind of give us that more information about it, okay? Keep it personal. That is the fatal flaw of most college essays. The student starts to wander and they lose focus on the fact that they're supposed to be talking about themselves. So please make sure that you focus the attention on yourself. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of examples. One of the essays that I get to read a lot is students will write about a particular role model who has had a special influence in their life. And that's a good topic because I get to learn a little bit about the students' values and what they see as being important in their life. The issue with that particular topic, however, is that the student spends so much time talking about the other person that I don't know anything new about about the student. And so, it becomes a little bit awkward for me to try and figure out, okay, well, what did I learn? I didn't learn anything new about the student, but their coach or their teacher or their parent or grandparent, they seem like a really cool person. I'd like to have dinner with that particular person. So if you're going to write about a role model, tell me a little bit about them, but tell me more about how your life has changed because you know them. Because you have that person in your life, tell me how you've become a better person. That's one example. The other example is we get a lot of essays from students who want to talk about their Eagle Scout project. And, you know, the thing about the Eagles, and so they spend the majority of their essay talking about what it is that they've built. Well, it's an Eagle Scout project. 99% of the time, I already know that you're going to build something. That's the nature of Eagle Scout projects. You're going to build something for the betterment of your community. So spending 90% of your essay telling me what it is that you built is not telling me anything, okay? Spend 10% of your essay telling me what you built. 90% of your essay should be about why you built it. Why was it important for you to build whatever it is that you're building, whether it was a jungle gym or a bridge or a series of benches, whatever it happens to be that you felt was important for you to do or for you to build. Spend the bulk of the time telling me why it is that you built it. That's going to give me some new information. That's going to make it personal. Okay. So in terms of the topic, you know, you can really write about whatever it is that you want to write about. There's a lot of freedom in there. So I would say rather than looking at the different prompts from the different applications, don't worry about it. Figure out first what it is that you would like to tell a particular school about yourself. What is it that I want to say? What's the message that I want to tell this particular school about who I am? Then look at the prompts. And it's going to be a lot easier for you to pick a prompt once you have figured out what it is that you want to write about. I call that writing from a position of power. Okay. When you have figured out what it is that you want to say and the prompt is just there as a guide, that's a position of power. If you look at all of the prompts and you're saying, oh my God, I don't know what to write about here, you're already behind. Okay, that's not a position of power, because now the prompt has taken the prompt becomes the power. Don't let the prompt be the power. You take control of the prompt. The essay is something that you can control, so you should be the person to control it. In terms of the length of your essay, look, anywhere between 250 to 650 words. 1 to 2 pages is really all we really have time to read. We're going to respect your application and give you the time to read your application thoroughly. But I can't read a 5-page essay. Okay. So it shouldn't be a haiku, you know, but don't write for me. Don't rewrite the Grapes of Wrath for me either. Okay. So 2 pages, 250 to 650 words. Okay. And the key thing with the essay, I always tell students, is take advantage of any specific writing skills that you have. Okay. So that if you are somebody who is good at writing poetry, write a poem for your essay. It shows that you're creative. It shows me that you know, the right side of your brain functions at a high level, so that if poetry is something that you're good at, take advantage of the opportunity that you have to share that with someone. It's a different style of writing, and it's a different way to express yourself. Okay. If you're somebody who has a good sense of humor, write a funny essay. We always love to read funny essays. It really is a great opportunity for us to see a different side to a student, if they have, you know, a strong sense of humor. If, however, you don't have a good sense of humor, I would say now is not the time to try and write a funny essay, because quite honestly, there's nothing worse than the unfunny funny essay. Okay, so be creative. There are different ways for you to write. But please make sure that you're writing in words and that you're writing in the right direction and all of those things. As I always tell students, be creative, don't be stupid. Don't do something that's going to make your essay look like junk, or is going to make it not legible or anything along those lines. Okay. Or is going to make it very difficult to read because you're trying to do something that you think in your brain is going to come off as clever, but it's really not. Okay. But you definitely want to, use your skill sets in terms of your writing. Please make sure that you have um, somebody read your essay before you hit that submit button. Okay. Be positive in your essay. Okay. Be positive. It should have a strong message. You want to make sure that you're leaving your readers with a strong message about who you are. That's what you want to get across to the reader. So make sure that it's a positive message. And then, even though, the common application, I think one of the prompts this year for the essay was, if you wanted to recycle an old essay that you've already written, I would stay away from that, and really, focus on who you are, and tell me something new. Tell me something that's fresh. Because if you're going to recycle an essay, I don't know when you wrote that. You could have written that as a freshman, or you could have written it as a sophomore or whatever. So I would say make it something new. Okay, you have a lot to say. You have a lot to talk about, to tell schools about who you are. So take advantage of that opportunity. Pay attention to what's happening around you in terms of your life. Okay, and tell us something that's new, or that's going to give us some new information about who you are. Okay. Remember that the essay is the living and the breathing part of the application, because you're the one who gets to control that. So it should be a manifestation of who you are. It's the living and the breathing part of your application. I saw that there was at least one question there. Is there anything worthwhile that a child can write about or list as an activity regarding playing video games? um, I would say, in terms of the activities resume, I'm not really impressed when I see that a student puts down that they spend a lot of time playing video games. That's not impressive to me. That seems to be an activity that most, if not all, teenagers are into and have been into. So listing that as an activity on your resume, I would steer clear of that. In terms of an essay, if you want to write about how playing video games has changed your life in some way, perhaps because of your interest in video games, you now want to create games. That would be something cool to kind of write about. So there is something worthwhile in terms of the essay piece, in terms of video games, in terms of listing it for on your resume, no, I don't see value in that. In terms of the resume, another thing that I would say in terms of that, make sure that that you're writing, for a lot of students, they're taking care of younger siblings at home, so they're not able to be involved in school activities because they have to go home or they have to go pick up a younger sibling and then take them home and make sure that they're getting their snack or doing whatever. Make sure that you include that as part of your activities resume. Does it matter if an essay is too personal? I'm that word "too" is scaring me a little bit. There is something that would be too personal. Remember your audience. Okay, remember the audience that you're writing to. Remember the purpose of this essay. The purpose is you want to get into a particular school, okay? And if you're too personal, you may scare off some colleges or universities, okay? I'll give you an example. I read an essay a couple of weeks ago where the student was hinting that there was abuse in the family, and she's a brilliant student, and I take that very seriously. And so I remember I went to my director, and I emailed her and I said, this student is brilliant, but her essay hints at there being abuse in the family dynamic. And so I wound up emailing the guidance counselor to see if I could get some insight. And the guidance counselor said, I am aware. She said that it is no longer, that was something that happened when she was very young. And so it is not happening in the family. And it was really just a way for her to talk about what it is that she was trying to get at. She wasn't trying to say that there was actual abuse happening. But so I figured I'd rather be safe than sorry. So please, anything along those lines, would be too personal. It should be something that should make you proud of who you are. Students, one of the topics that students write about, which I find amazing, and I get inspiration from, oftentimes is students who come out in their essay in terms of being LGBTQ and talking about how that process went for them, and the positiveness that eventually came out of coming out as LGBTQ. So that you remember, you want to leave it on a positive tone. It should be positive. Can absences due to health issues or a 504 be mentioned here? I wouldn't mention it in the essay section. There is a section, I think it comes right after the essay, where it says additional information. That is the perfect place to write about any health issues that you've had, or perhaps any learning differences that you may have. That's the perfect place to write about it. I would say if you want to, if having a learning difference, if you want to talk about how you've achieved or perhaps overachieved despite your learning differences, then yes, write an essay about, the difficulties you were having before you got diagnosed, and then you got diagnosed, and what you've done since the diagnosis to achieve your goals, whether they're in the classroom or outside of the classroom. If you don't feel comfortable writing that, then simply mentioning your health issues, or your 504 plan or IEP, whatever it happens to be, writing that as part of the additional information section is perfect. Okay. I hope this has been helpful. That's my time. So it's a great process. Don't let the process consume you. Have fun with this particular process, and especially have fun with the essay. Tardies on a transcript, how much weight do they carry? It depends on how many times the student is late. If the student's late every day to every class, that's cause for concern. If they have one or two tardies, we're not really going to worry about that at all. All right. So good night, everyone. Have a great rest of the night.
Thank you, Ulysses. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. We will be posting these presentations on our school website to be viewed and accessible after tonight, in case you need to rewatch or listen to that information again. We can also share any of our presenters' contacts information with you should you want to reach out to them directly. Just please contact your your child's counselor at the high school. Our next presenters will be on with us shortly.
Okay, I can start. My name is Julie Panzanero, and I'm the Director of Admissions at Hudson Valley Community College. I have been at the college for about 32 years now, and I think out of those 32 years, I have done this program. I was trying to think today, I feel like it's been over 20 years. This is the first time I've done it like this, and I apologize because this is the time where my dog likes to play, so I have her sequestered in the basement with my 20-year-old. So I apologize if she starts to bark, but hopefully she won't. And I'll let Cassandra introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cassandra Tremaine. I'm the admissions counselor at SUNY Adirondack. I graduated from college in 2017, and I've been at SUNY Adirondack ever since. So I'm just a little over 3 years in my role as admissions counselor. I also have dogs, but they're generally on their good behavior. So let's hope that stays that way as well.
Great. Okay. Yeah, mine's a puppy, so she hasn't learned that good behavior yet. Okay, so basically, can you guys see? I'm seeing myself in a little block. Is that right, or are you guys seeing me
Yep.
in a bigger? I can't tell.
We can see you both.
So I'm all good, right?
You're all good.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is Cassandra and I are really going to talk about the two-year college. Both of us are really familiar with the SUNY colleges, the SUNY community colleges. So typically that's what we talk about. There are public two-year schools. There are private two-year schools. We really, for the most part, we talk about the community colleges. So our two schools, Hudson Valley and Adirondack Community College, or SUNY Adirondack, I'm sorry. I'm showing my 30 years. We are part of the SUNY system. So the SUNY system is really made up of 64 campuses. And I don't know if you guys had a presentation on Tuesday night that really talked about the four-year college, but really of those 64 campuses, they consist of the community colleges, the comprehensive colleges, which are like your Plattsburgh, your New Paltz, the colleges of technology, which could be your Cobleskill, your Delhi, your Morrisville, and your university centers, like Albany, Binghamton, Stony Brook, and Buffalo. So there are 30 community colleges within the system, and I did a little fact finding because I have facts. My last facts I pulled from SUNY were in 2011. So I pulled some more recent facts about the SUNY as a system, which is really the most expensive system really in the country. And undergraduate enrollment right now in SUNY, this is as of fall 2020, was 350,889 undergraduate students. Of that, 173, I don't have my total number with me because I left my other sheet downstairs, but over 173,000, almost 174,000 of those are community college enrollees. So if you do the math, pretty much the community colleges make up a good chunk, almost half of the students enrolled within the SUNY system. So we have a voice, and it's a loud voice within the system. We have campuses pretty much across the state. So we're everywhere from, Nassau Community College down south. We have Clinton Community College up north, Niagara out to the west. And, we sit here in the east with Fulton Montgomery, Adirondacks a little northeast, Schenectady, Fulton Montgomery, Hudson Valley are all kind of in the eastern part. And then everywhere pretty much in between, you'll find community colleges. Also, another kind of fun fact is 50% of New Yorkers live within 5 miles of a SUNY campus, and 99.8% are within 30 miles of one. So SUNY is all around us. And there is certainly opportunities in all sorts of different colleges around us, whether students are looking at going away to school or really trying to stay close to home. At the community colleges, typically we offer certain types of degrees. We are offering associate degrees, we're offering certificates. We look at the different types of degrees we offer. There's what we call associate in arts degrees, associate in science, associates in applied science, associates in occupational studies, and then certificate programs as well. Really, those AA and AS degrees are those programs that were really designed for that 2-year transfer. So a student comes right out of high school and they say, I want to go to my local community college, but I know I want to transfer on and I know I want to get a bachelor's degree. For the most part, that student might be looking at an AA or an AS degree. We have some students that, the trades are really big right now. And as we went into this pandemic, there was a lot of commercials, a lot of advertising and marketing centered around the trades and, getting a degree in the trades or a certificate. So those are, some of those programs are associate and applied science programs, which are our AAS, but others are what we call AOS programs, which are associate in occupational studies. Things at Hudson Valley would be like your automotive program. So students go for 2 years and they get a degree, and they go out and work with that degree. Some of our students will come back, say they do automotive, they might come back and do auto body or do another type of trade program. With the associate and applied science programs, they really are programs that kind of were designed, 32 years ago, the associate and applied science program was really a student that said, okay, I want to go into early childhood and I want to get out and I want to be a preschool teacher, or I want to open up my own daycare center. Over the years, really those programs have become more transferable type programs where the departments, the department heads in those programs have worked really closely with our transfer offices and those 4-year schools to really come up with some good, solid, what we call articulation agreements, where students can come into our programs and there's a whole kind of layout for them that says, okay, if you're looking at XYZ school that you want to transfer to, you take these courses and those courses transfer over to our 4-year institution. Pretty much students come in at junior status with those programs. So I tell students all the time, don't think because you're in an associate in applied science program that your credits are not going to transfer or you can't get that 4-year degree. Many of our students now transfer out of the associate in applied science programs into 4-year bachelor programs. So that's a very common switch. So the other certificate programs, we all offer different types of certificate programs. The nice part about those programs and the things we're finding right now, really within the pandemic, is certificate programs are really kind of quick to put together. Schools do kind of as a result of hearing from the community what maybe is lacking. You know, I use a perfect example of sometimes like the local dentist will come to us and say, all right, I need more dental assistants, or just different employers who are looking for a certain skill set, but not necessarily somebody that has a degree. So they'll work with an academic department on our campuses, and they'll put together a quick credential, and we can market that, and students can apply, and within a year, they have a certificate, and they can go out and seek employment. So we have certificate programs as well. So we have all those different options. Right now, I think we're all becoming really clever with offering different types of credentials. Micro credentials is one thing we're talking about, which kind of stacks different credentials on top of each other. So maybe a student is working towards an associate degree, but along the way, they're getting certain types of certifications and credentials. The other thing that I talk about when we talk about the community colleges is we'll have very similar programs and we have very different programs. So you'll probably find in most of our institutions that there are some sort of business programs, that we have some sort of general studies or individual studies type program, liberal arts type programs, but we all differ in other types of programs. And, you know, Hudson Valley has a dental hygiene program. Adirondack has you guys have a great culinary program and a baking program, which you don't find kind of all over. Some of those programs are very different. And I was also just looking, and you have an outdoor education program, which is very different as well. So there's some similarities to us, but there's a lot of differences to us as well. So when you're looking at two-year schools, you really want to get in touch with the school to find out what they're looking for. Number one, make sure they have your program, because I think we both had this experience. Sometimes students will come up to us, and I always use vet tech as the perfect example. Students will come up to us and they'll be like, I want to go into vet tech. And they're positive they want to come to Hudson Valley. And, you know, Adirondack may have the same thing, but we don't offer that program. And there's really not a lot we can give a student who truly wants to be a vet tech. Maybe a math class, maybe their English class, but they really should be looking at a school that has a vet tech program. And sometimes they want to come because their friend's coming. So I think number one, it's really important for students to do the research, to know, you know, if they know what program they want, to research that and really say, okay, what schools have this program? And SUNY has an excellent site for, if you're looking within the SUNY system, of being able to put in what programs you're looking for, and then it kind of spits out what schools have that type of program. So that's a way kind of to start your search, and to know you want to look for schools that have the program that you're really interested in. And then from there, you would contact that school, really get the information as far as, you know, what you need to get in. And every school is a little bit different in how we accept students. So we're all, you know, community colleges, we're all SUNY community colleges, but we may accept our students a little bit differently. Some schools will accept kind of under an umbrella, so they accept to the college, but maybe not necessarily to a specific program. Whereas other schools like Hudson Valley will accept directly. We have prerequisites for every program. So we have to make sure before we put you into, say, early childhood, that you have certain requirements to get into that program. So that's another thing you just want to be sure of. You want to make sure that when you're looking at a program at a certain school, that you know what you need to get into that program. And that way you'll know, you know, if you're looking as a junior, or even a sophomore, you would have an idea. If you need prerequisite courses, then you would know, okay, I know that I need to take X, Y, and Z before I apply to college. And some students, you know, if it's not a popular program or a competitive program, we have some students that will take a course over the summer. So maybe between their junior and senior year, or maybe even after they graduate, they'll take a course in the summer, hoping that when they finish it, they'd be able to get into their program of choice at the two-year school. We also have, many of us, you know, we have popular programs and we have what we call competitive programs. So popular programs are really just programs where we have more seats we have more applicants than we have seats. So we always try to encourage students to apply early to certain programs. We don't have any criteria. It's usually kind of a first come, first serve. So if we have 80 seats in a program, the first 80 qualified students kind of are going to get into that program, and then other students are going to go onto a wait list. There's also what we call competitive programs, which are programs that have specific criteria to get into those. And I always use nursing as an example. You know, many of us have nursing programs, and those programs are so popular that we need, number one, you need to find ways to control those applications, and you need to find ways to basically admit students that are going to succeed in the program. Because when these programs are looking at their accreditation, they really need to show that we've admitted students and our students are succeeding. So we have certain criteria. Our criteria may be different than what SUNY Adirondacks is or what Fulton Montgomery's is. We're all a little bit different, but we all typically have some sort of competitive criteria for those programs where we just have so many applications, and we have to find a way to get the most qualified students and the students that we know are going to succeed. The nice part about community colleges is if you aren't one of those students right up front, so say you're interested in nursing, but you don't have the requirements, so you didn't do chemistry, or you did chemistry and you may not have done as well as you would have liked to. We have ways to bring you in through alternate programs, like a general studies program, to just get the courses that you need to be able to succeed in those programs. So even though you may not meet the qualifications right up front, there's other ways that you can start working towards getting that degree and really kind of meeting your goals. So what I'll do from here is I will hand it over to Cassandra, who's really going to talk a little bit about applying to the colleges, because we all can be a little bit different as far as how we accept applications, as well as some of the student service programs, so what student service options. So once you get to the colleges, here's the different services that we have available to you.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I'll start talking a little bit about the application process to community college. As Julie mentioned, it's going to be a little bit different based on each individual campus. So you definitely want to check with whatever school you plan on applying with. For example, at SUNY Adirondack, we do not really have an application deadline, so we accept students really up until the start of the semester. Other campuses may have an application deadline. We also participate generally in what's called open enrollment. So we do not require SAT or ACT scores. Really what we're looking for is what we say equal opportunity, any student who has the potential to succeed at the college level. And the way we determine that is if you graduate from high school or get your GED or TASC. So there's different criteria, as she mentioned, also for different programs. So the nursing program has specific prerequisites and the engineering program, but the application process is going to vary a little bit based on each campus. We participate in the SUNY application. So the SUNY overall has an application site where you can apply to different SUNY schools. Many community colleges will also have their application on their website. It's important to check that out because, for example, SUNY Adirondack on our website, our application is free. If you apply through the SUNY application, there is an application fee. Other schools may have lower application fees in the SUNY app, so you would want to check each individual campus for those types of things. There's a lot of benefits to attending a community college, aside from costs that I'm sure many of you are aware of the cost-saving benefits. But there's also an opportunity for students to kind of test the waters in different areas. If they're not exactly sure what it is they want to do, or they have varying interests, community college is a great way to test the waters in their areas of interest while doing their general education requirements and finding something that's really sticks with them and that really works for them. Community colleges also offer a wide range of support services, and I think that personally is one of the biggest benefits of SUNY Adirondack, is really giving that individualized attention and helping students prepare for college level work. So for example, some of the support services that many community colleges offer, some sort of academic advising. So at SUNY Adirondack, it's called our Student Success Center. It may be called something slightly different at each campus, but they generally all have some sort of academic advising. And the academic advising is really important for students to help make sure they're picking their classes correctly and graduating on time, answering any questions they may have about courses and registering. and kind of what their degree path looks like. So they kind of guide them along the way. We also have like career counselors, so students who may not exactly know what to do with the degree path that they're currently in. The career counselors can help direct them. Again, each campus is going to have a little bit different wording for each of these types of services. So career counselors, Business Central, and we also have transfer counselors. So community colleges is a great place to start out, even if you want to go on to get your bachelor's degree. Those transfer counselors can make sure that you're taking the required courses to be able to transfer and hopefully get that junior status once you transfer to that 4-year institution. So they just kind of help guide you along the way. One of the biggest benefits of community colleges is having those additional supports. Outside of just academic support, we generally also have personal counseling for students that may be having trouble transitioning to the college learning environment. There's accessibility services for students with IEP or 504 plans. There's also generally a lot of tutoring services at the community college level. So at SUNY Adirondack, we do have free tutoring for almost every academic major, and many other community colleges are going to offer tutoring, especially in the areas of, say, math and reading and writing, to really prepare students for the coursework that's required at the college level. I know one thing that a lot of students kind of are hesitant about community college is really wanting that college environment. And a lot of community colleges are starting to get housing on campus for students. So whether you go to a community college that's right in your backyard but still want to live on campus, or if you travel a little bit away for a community college, a lot of community colleges are becoming residential, so students can still get that college environment. In addition, there's student life and diversity offices and student engagement. I apologize, my phone's ringing there. So there are different ways to get involved on campus, both on and off campus events for commuters, for residential students. So you still get that college feel. Most of the community colleges also have athletics. So if you're interested in continuing your athletic journey at a community college, that's also an opportunity. So you get a lot of additional support services, you get some cost saving benefits, but the biggest benefit is you really get that college feel, but having people support you each step of the way. And then from there, when you're ready to transfer on to a 4-year institution or enter the workforce after 2 years at a community college, or 1 year if you're in a certificate program, then it gives you the opportunity just to prepare for that future level, whatever kind of pathway that students choose. Because as Julie mentioned, there's some degree programs that do lead to workforce readiness, and then there's some degree programs that are really intended to transfer on to get your bachelor's degree at that 4-year level. So community college just in general just offers a little bit more support for students right out of high school, helps them with that transition, helps them with the college learning environment, and really prepares them for success at a future level.
We also have, just to add to that too, right now we all have these college health service offices that are busier than they ever imagined they would be. So they are like major pandemic central, and as far as all the guidance that comes out to the colleges and the pool testing that's required by SUNY, you know, those offices normally they're there for the students on any given regular year, I guess we would say, for the student that doesn't feel well. And there's, you know, we have a doctor, I think once a week, that comes, and, you know, there's a place to rest if you don't feel well between classes, or but they've taken on a whole new meaning over the past year. So the other thing that I just real quick want to talk about, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, was the SUNY View Book. The high schools get, it's called the SUNY View Book, and it used to have a lot of what's in it, used to be in it, is now online on the suny.edu site, but there is information that really kind of highlights each college. So it's just kind of a little snippet of each institution, and it talks about what the enrollment is, has contact information, talks about most popular programs, and then there's some pictures, and there's usually just a little paragraph that kind of, you know, gives you an idea of what the college is all about. But then you can certainly go on the college website and you can get more information if it's something that is appealing to you. So that each student, I believe, I know the high schools get a quantity of them. Our transfer offices do. And I think the students, I don't know if it's SAT takers, so maybe it's through the College Board, they mail those out to students as well. So if you haven't seen those yet, you probably will see those soon. But that's just a great resource. And then again, when you go online to the site, you can certainly see, you know, if you're looking at, you want to be an elementary school teacher, you can look at, if you want to start at a community college, you can go into some sort of education type program, an early childhood program, a teacher prep program. But then you can look at and see the four-year institutions that have elementary education, if that's what you're interested in, or could be secondary education. And, you know, some schools have elementary ed and don't have secondary, or vice versa. So that the site's it's a great resource for that sort of thing, and just doing some digging. The other thing, clearly, as far as the community colleges go, and SUNY as a whole, is affordability. You know, I think we all have those students that are the top students in their class. We get those students every year. They come to the community colleges as well. And it's a lot of it, you know, and I'll use our engineering program as an example. Students start out, they do 2 years in our engineering program, and they can transfer to RPI or Clarkson or Union. But the cost savings up front is, you know, it's a great perk. And, you know, the students go, and we've been told by RPI faculty just how well prepared our students are when they get to RPI, you know, junior status. And we've had those faculty come and talk to some of our guidance counselors at our counselor breakfast, or our school counselors, and they share that with them. So it's just a great resource. And for some of the students, really, it's economical. They're top high achieving students. They choose community college. They get involved. They, you know, they're on student senate. They write for the newspaper, and they're a great contribution to the 2-year school, and they package themselves up nicely to move right onto that four-year institution. So that is a huge benefit to SUNY, is just the affordability of really all of the campuses. So I think the other thing that I would say too, and I think Cassandra would agree with me, is, and it's really hard right now, we're all trying to find ways to get students to be able to see our campuses. So we're all doing virtual type programs, and, you know, we've had our tour guides sitting on the computer and showing people around our campus map, basically. And, you know, there's little spots where you can stop on a building, and it kind of, you hear a voice talking about what goes on in that building. But I would say once things open back up, is to get out on the campuses. We're all very different. Where we're at geographically is very different, and our campuses are very different. Some are smaller, some are larger. Some, you know, may have 5 or 6 buildings. Some may have 14 or 15 or 16 buildings. Some may have housing right on campus. Some may have it off-site. Some community colleges own their housing. Others just have housing that are private developers where students rent. But it's just important, and I still will stress that. I'm a, you know, get out and see it for yourself kind of person. So I think it's important to, you know, once we open back up, to get on those campuses when the good weather comes, and check them out. Because I always say we all have these very glitzy brochures, and I love our brochures, but photographers come on campus and they basically take pictures of, you know, the prettiest parts of your campus, and it's usually a beautiful day and the best time of year. And you just want to go see for yourself, because brochures, you know, even though they're beautiful, you want to go see it, and you want to make sure that it's somewhere that you as a student are comfortable, and you can see yourself being there. And so now we have a few minutes for questions, if anybody has any.
Thank you. So it looks like we have one question. It says, I'd like to ask a question about the nursing program. We here to work as an RN, you need a 4-year degree. How do you see that playing out with a community college?
Well, typically the 2-year program gives them their RN. So, and then the students, they certainly can transfer on to a BSN program. Depending on where you're working, and I don't know this for sure, but I think that you get a certain amount of time to actually get your BSN. So, you know, I know our RNs, a lot of them are out working right now. I mean, look at going back to school part-time. So I think it's, you know, I think there's a certain amount of time you get to get bachelor's. So it's still, you know, it's an option. You know, right now for our 100-spot nursing program, we have about 11 to 1,200 applications. So I think, you know, a lot of students are still choosing the 2-year RN path and then finishing up their education later.
Yeah, I can echo that sentiment. With the 2-year nursing degree, you can still work after your 2-year RN degree, and I would agree that majority of our students enter the workforce after their 2-year RN degree, and then go back to school on a part-time basis or later on in their career to get their BSN. And it goes back to that transferability as well. There's a lot of RN to BSN programs. So for example, SUNY Plattsburgh has a branch campus that's right on SUNY Adirondacks campus, and they offer the second 2 years. So it's an RN to BSN program where they can do 2 more years to get their BSN. But I would agree that a majority of our students are able to enter the workforce right after their 2-year degree, and then transfer on and get their BSN from there.
Great. So we have another question. Have we missed the deadline for HVCC for nursing 2021? Is it too late?
I would say right now we do have deadlines, but I would say they're very soft deadlines at this point, just because, number one, because of the pandemic, and sometimes getting documents and transcripts takes a little bit longer. And number two, Hudson Valley has instituted a new computer system right now as well. So we're trying to get all those applications and all the documents coming in. You know, we're trying to get those into the new system. So I would say it's usually a February 1st deadline. I would definitely have the application in by February 1st. So I would say go out, fill out the application, and then have the school send your transcript like ASAP. And if you, I don't know if you work through Parchment and send them electronically, but you know, if that's the case, then you could submit the application. The high school can send us a transcript quickly, and providing you meet the math, bio, and chem requirements, we would send you out a letter telling you to sign up to take the TEAS test, which is the test that we use to determine who gets accepted to the program.
Last chance for questions. I don't see any more.
And again, I mean, we're here. Our offices are open in some capacity. We have some people on campus every day. And I think, everybody from, I sit in on the directors meetings once a month, and, everybody is partly back. Half the staff is back. The other half is still working remote. We kind of flip-flop. Different days, different people go in, but we do have an on-campus presence. And we're there. You can email us, you can give us a call, and I pretty much speak, I think, for all the community colleges when I say that.
Well, thank you both so much for spending this time with our families this evening. We really appreciate it. And I know, you're both so wonderful. Anytime we have questions, and reach out, you're always so quick to respond. So we really appreciate that as well. So thank you to all of our families who joined us. And this concludes our 2-part series of our college night for students and parents. So thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Cassandra.
You're welcome.
You guys have a good night and good luck with application season. Thank you.
Bye-bye.